I stood in the rain, watching the movers carry elegant furniture into my sister Emma's new mansion. A wedding gift from our parents. A $2.8 million house in the most prestigious neighborhood in Boston. Meanwhile, I lived in a small apartment above the bookstore where I worked, barely making ends meet. Isn't it perfect for them? My mother gushed, not noticing how soaked I'd gotten standing outside. Emma and James will be so happy here. And there's plenty of room for grandchildren. I forced a smile, thinking of the congratulations card I'd scraped together money to buy. It's beautiful, Mom. Emma emerged from the house, immaculate in designer clothes, her new engagement ring catching what little sunlight filtered through the clouds. Madison, you finally made it. What do you think of our little starter home? Starter home. As if a nearly $3 million mansion was just a stepping stone. It's lovely, I managed. The perfect wedding present. Oh, don't be jealous, Maddie. Emma laughed, using the nickname I'd always hated. I'm sure you'll find someone special too. Maybe one of those nice boys at the bookstore. Our mother jumped in. You know the Henderson's son is still single. He's an accountant now. Very stable career. I bit my tongue. At 32, I had a master's degree in literature and was working on my first novel. But to them, I was just the family disappointment. The daughter who chose books over business, dreams over security. I should go, I said quietly. My shift starts soon. On a Saturday? Mom frowned. But we're having a family dinner to celebrate Emma's house. Some of us have to work weekends, Mom. Emma rolled her eyes. Still so dramatic, Maddie. This is why you struggle, you know. Always choosing the hard way instead of accepting help. Help, like the full ride to business school I'd turned down. Like the position at Dad's firm I'd refused. Like the arranged dates with suitable men I'd avoided. What they never understood was that their help always came with strings. Golden handcuffs designed to shape me into their version of success. The bookstore is short-staffed, I said, already turning to leave. And I need the hours. Well, Mom sighed, at least take some leftovers home. I hate thinking of you eating alone in that tiny apartment. I didn't tell her that my tiny apartment was my sanctuary, a space filled with books, art, and peace. A place where I could write without judgment, dream without limits. The next morning, I stopped at Pete's corner store for my usual coffee. Pete, a grandfather figure who'd been running the shop for 40 years, greeted me with unusual excitement. Madison, did you check your ticket? I'd blinked, confused. Then I remembered the lottery ticket I'd bought 2 days ago. A silly impulse purchase with my last $5 when the jackpot had hit record numbers. Not yet. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet. What were the winning numbers? Pete's eyes sparkled. Check the news, sweetheart. I pulled out my phone, finding the lottery website. The numbers appeared on screen. 7, 13, 24, 31, 42, 53. My hands started shaking. I looked at my ticket, then back at the screen. Pete, my voice was barely a whisper. I think I won. He grinned. I know you did, honey. I watched them draw your numbers live last night. All 6 matching numbers. You just won $97 million. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I grabbed the counter for support. Sit down before you fall down. Pete guided me to a chair. Deep breaths. This is big news, but you need to be smart now. Don't tell anyone yet. Get a lawyer first, and for heaven's sake, sign that ticket. With trembling fingers, I signed the back of the ticket. Pete locked it in his safe, made me drink some water, and called his daughter, a respected financial attorney. "Caroline will meet you in an hour," he said. "She'll help you do this right." I nodded, still dazed. "Pete, my family." He squeezed my shoulder. "We'll find out soon enough. But right now, this is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you." As I waited for Caroline, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Family brunch tomorrow to discuss wedding plans. Wear something nice for once, and try not to be late like always." I stared at the message, thinking of her mansion, her perfect life, our parents' endless praise. For 20 years, I'd been the family afterthought, the daughter they'd written off as impractical, unsuccessful, lost. Now I had 97 million reasons to prove them wrong. I texted back, "Sorry, can't make it. I have something more important to do." For once, I wasn't lying. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new lawyer's office, signing the final papers to claim my winnings. Caroline, Pete's daughter, had been invaluable, helping me set up trusts, investment accounts, and ironclad privacy protections. "Remember," she said, reviewing the documents, "once we submit these, your name becomes public record. Are you ready for that?" I thought of the changes I'd already made. I'd quietly resigned from the bookstore, leaving my manager a generous check to help hire and train my replacement. I'd bought a beautiful but modest house in a quiet neighborhood, using a trust to keep my name off public records. And I'd started the groundwork for my own publishing company, determined to help other overlooked writers find their voices. "I'm ready," I said firmly. The next morning, my face was splashed across every news outlet in Boston. Local writer wins $97 million lottery jackpot. Bookstore employee becomes multimillionaire overnight. Madison Bennett claims record-breaking prize. My phone exploded with messages. Old classmates, distant relatives, forgotten acquaintances, all suddenly remembering my existence. But the messages I was waiting for came last. First, Emma. "OMG, Maddie. Why didn't you tell us? Call me immediately." Then Mom. "Madison Elizabeth Bennett. How could you keep this from your family? We're coming over right now. Where are you living?" Finally, Dad. "Your mother is hysterical. Call us this instant." I turned off my phone and poured myself a cup of tea, settling into my new home office. Through the window, I could see the garden where I planned to create a reading nook. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold, making the moment feel almost magical. My doorbell rang. Through the security camera, another of Caroline's suggestions, I saw them. My parents and Emma, standing on my porch. Emma was dressed like she was heading to a photo shoot, while my mother kept smoothing her designer dress nervously. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Madison," my mother burst out. "We've been so worried. Why haven't you answered our calls? And how did you afford this house? The lottery money hasn't even been released yet and—" "Hello, Mother." I cut her off calmly. "Would you like to come in?" They filed into my living room, taking in the tasteful furnishings and wall-to-wall bookshelves with barely concealed surprise. "Well," Emma said, running a finger along the shelf, "I suppose now you can finally move to a better neighborhood. Maybe near my new house. There's a lovely little colonial for sale, only $4 million. "I'm happy here," I interrupted. "But thank you for your concern." "Maddie, darling." My mother leaned forward, her voice dripping with honey. "You have to understand our shock. This is life-changing money. You'll need guidance, proper financial advice. Your father knows several excellent wealth managers. I have a team of advisors, I said. And it's Madison, not Maddie. Don't be difficult, Emma snapped. We're trying to help. God knows you've never been good with money. Like that time I loaned you $10,000 for your starter business, I asked quietly. The one you never paid back. Emma's face flushed. That was different. I needed. What you needed was to take responsibility. I stood up, my voice steady. Something none of you have ever expected from her. Now see here. My father finally spoke, his face reddening. We've always supported you both equally. I laughed, actually laughed. Equally. You bought Emma a mansion for her wedding. You paid for her business school, her first car, her perfect wedding. What did you give me for graduation? A lecture about practical career choices. Because we worried about you. My mother cried. Your choices were so impractical. We just wanted. You wanted me to be like Emma, I finished. The perfect daughter. The sensible one. Well, guess what? My impractical choices led me here. My job at the bookstore, the one you all look down on, is where I bought the winning ticket. And now you can finally have a real life, Emma said, as if she was being generous. We can help you invest, get you into the right social circles. No. The room fell silent. What do you mean no? My father demanded. I walked to my desk and pulled out 3 envelopes. Emma, this is a cashier's check for $10,000, repaying the loan you've conveniently forgotten about. I handed her the first envelope. Mom, Dad, this is a check for $15,000, the total of every gift, every payment, every contribution you've ever made to my life. I've kept careful records. They stared at the envelopes, speechless. The 3rd envelope, I continued, contains documents showing I've already established my own publishing company, created a charitable foundation for literacy programs, and set up my investments with one of the top firms in the country. I didn't need your guidance then, and I certainly don't need it now. But we're family, my mother whispered. Yes, we are. And family should love unconditionally. Support dreams, not squash them. Celebrate differences, not try to erase them. I walked to the door and opened it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my foundation board about funding new libraries in underserved communities. You're making a mistake, my father said stiffly. You need us. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Dad, you need me. And that's the real reason you're here, isn't it? Emma stood up, her face a mask of fury. You think you're better than us now? Because of some lucky numbers? No, Emma, I always was. You just never saw it. As they left, my mother turned back, tears in her eyes. Madison, please. We made a terrible mistake. We see that now. Can't we start over? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw for the first time how small she seemed. How all of them seemed, trapped in their narrow view of success and worth. Maybe someday, I said softly, but not today. I closed the door on their protests, walking back to my office. On my desk sat the manuscript of my novel, a story about a girl finding her voice in a world that tried to silence her. It was time to write the next chapter. 6 months later, the launch party for Bennett Publishing House was everything I dreamed of. We transformed an old warehouse into a magical space filled with books, art, and possibility. Local authors whose works we'd signed mingled with literary agents and journalists, while kids from our literacy program proudly showed off their own stories in a special display area. Pete stood beside me, beaming like a proud father. Look at what you've built, Madison, and not a penny wasted on showing off. He was right. While I could have easily bought a gleaming downtown office tower, I'd chosen to renovate this historic building instead, creating a space that felt like home to writers and readers alike. The millions I'd won had been carefully invested in education programs, in supporting new authors, in building something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Saw your company in the business journal. Must be nice having everything handed to you. Betito, James lost his job. We could use some family support right now. I deleted the message without responding. Over the past months, they tried everything. Guilt, manipulation, fake kindness, and finally, outright demands. Emma's starter mansion was apparently too small now. Mom and Dad's country club membership needed renewal. James's failed investments needed covering. I'd ignored them all. Miss Bennett? A young girl tugged at my sleeve. She was one of our literacy program students, clutching a notebook. Will you read my story? Of course, Sophie. I led her to a quiet corner, sitting down at her level. What's it about? A girl who finds a magic pen, she said shyly. Everything she writes comes true, but she has to figure out what's really important to write about. I smiled, thinking how wisdom sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Madison. I looked up. My mother stood there, looking uncomfortable in the casual atmosphere. She'd lost some of her polished perfection. The past months had been hard on them, I knew. Dad's firm had lost several major clients. Emma's perfect marriage was showing cracks, and their social circle had begun to shrink as their resources dwindled. Mom, this is a private event. I know. I had to talk to you. She glanced at Sophie. Alone? I turned to Sophie. Why don't you show your story to Miss Sarah? She's our children's book editor. After Sophie scampered off, I faced my mother. Well, your father's company is failing, she said bluntly. Emma's house is being foreclosed. Everything's falling apart, and you're here playing with children's stories. I stood up, anger flaring. Playing? Look around, Mom. Really look. See those kids? They're learning to love reading, to believe in their own voices. See those authors? They're getting chances they never had before. I'm not playing, I'm building something real. But your family has never respected my choices. I cut in. Even now, you're not here because you care about what I've built. You're here because you need money. She flinched. We're still your family. Are you? I walked her over to our wall of success stories. Photos of children reading, authors signing their first contracts, community programs making real change. Family celebrates each other's victories. Family supports each other's dreams. When was the last time you asked about my novel? My goals? My happiness? I don't know. Exactly. I turned to face her. The lottery didn't change who I am, Mom. It just gave me the freedom to stop seeking approval I was never going to get. Tears filled her eyes. We were wrong. I see that now. But can't you forgive us? Forgiveness isn't the issue, I said gently. I forgave you months ago. That's why I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. What do you want from us? Nothing. That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore. And until you can want a relationship with me that isn't about money or status or your idea of success, we don't have anything to discuss. A commotion near the entrance caught my attention. Emma had arrived with Dad and James in tow. Really? I sighed. You all came to ambush me at my company's launch. We're desperate. Emma cried, mascara running down her cheeks. James lost everything in that investment scheme. The bank is taking our house, and Daddy's company is dying. Please, Maddie, you have to help us. The room had gone quiet. Our guests tried to pretend they weren't watching the drama unfold. I looked at my family. Really looked at them. Dad, gray and deflated without his usual power. Emma, designer clothes now slightly worn, desperate for a bailout. Mom, torn between pride and need. No, I said firmly. No. Dad's voice cracked. I'll make you all a different offer instead. I pulled out my phone, pulling up some photos. This is Carter Financial Services. They're looking for experienced advisors with community connections. Dad, they've agreed to interview you for a senior position. No guarantees, but a fair shot. I swiped to the next photo. Emma, the local arts center needs a fundraising coordinator. With your social skills and event planning experience, you'd be perfect. James, my friend's construction company is hiring project managers. Real work, fair pay. You want us to work for other people. Emma looked horrified. I want you to earn your own way. Like I did. Build something real. Find out who you are without the fancy titles and borrowed money. And if we refuse, Dad asked stiffly, then you'll figure something else out. But you won't get a dime from me to maintain the lifestyle that made us all so unhappy. Mom stepped forward, surprising me. The Arts Center, they really think Emma would be good at fundraising? Yes, because she is good at it. When she's actually trying, not just playing the perfect daughter. Emma wiped her eyes, smearing expensive mascara. I don't know how to be anything else. Yes, you do. I took her hand, the first time we touched in months. You're smart, capable, and determined. Use those qualities for something meaningful instead of just appearances. Dad cleared his throat. The position, at Carter Financial. When's the interview? Tomorrow at 10. Don't wear your Rolex. Show them your experience, not your ego. One by one, they nodded. Not happy, not grateful, but perhaps thoughtful. As they left, Mom turned back. Your company, it's really amazing, Madison. I'm sorry we never saw. I know, I said softly. Maybe someday you'll see me too. After they were gone, Pete appeared at my side. You okay, kiddo? I looked around at my publishing house, at the dreams being born, the stories being told, the lives being changed. You know what, Pete? I really am. Sophie came running back, waving her notebook. Ms. Bennett, Ms. Sarah loved my story. She said maybe someday it could be a real book. I knelt down beside her. Want to know a secret, Sophie? Every real book starts with someone brave enough to tell their story. Like you. Like all of us. Later that night, I sat in my garden reading nook, working on my novel. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I have an interview at the Arts Center tomorrow. Any advice? I smiled, typing back. Be yourself, your real self. The lottery hadn't just given me millions. It had given me the chance to show my family and myself what real wealth looked like. Not the money in my bank account, but the courage to finally be exactly who I was meant to be. And that was worth more than any number could measure.
I find myself entangled in a rather perplexing situation as I consider approaching your father regarding a troubling incident related to a potential mugging of my own father. Indeed, suspicions have arisen concerning your father's involvement in this alleged mugging. Currently, he is situated at home. Would you be open to allowing me a brief audience with him for an inquiry? The police officer displayed a momentary sense of bewilderment in response to my request, his expression betraying a subtle confusion. Despite this, he eventually agreed, stating, "Please, let me see him." Consequently, I led the police officer into the confines of my home, unlocking the door to reveal my father's presence. Upon beholding my father, the police officer was visibly taken aback by the unexpected revelation. This incident transpired a few months ago, and as I reflect upon it, I feel compelled to share a bit more about myself. My name is David, and I am currently a fourth-year university student. Despite my aspirations to work for a prominent company, there lingers an unresolved dilemma within me. The decision revolves around whether or not to inherit my father's company. You see, my father holds the esteemed position of president at a modest factory. During my formative years, I harbored a desire to follow in my father's footsteps, aspiring to become a president like him. However, as I entered my rebellious phase, I distanced myself from this ambition, feeling a sense of embarrassment towards my father perpetually adorned in work clothes stained with oil. This sentiment persisted through my teenage years and, to some extent, endures even now. As I matured into adulthood and engaged in part-time employment, my perspective on my father began to shift. I developed a newfound respect for his tireless work ethic, which sustained not only our family but also supported numerous employees and their families. Yet despite this growing admiration, an underlying sentiment lingered. A perception that the conventional salaryman, donned in a suit and toiling diligently, possessed a certain allure absent in my father's occupation. The narrative takes an intriguing turn when, during a shopping excursion with my father, we were unexpectedly hailed from behind. Turning together, my father and I encountered Richard, a contemporary of my father's from high school. Dressed in a suit and on an external sales trip, Richard hailed from a prestigious corporation. In the course of our conversation, Richard casually inquired if my father had indeed assumed control of the family business. This revelation prompted Richard to express disdain for what he referred to as the dirty little factory managed by my father, emphasizing the incredulity that a high school graduate could rise to the position of president. Stunned by Richard's derogatory remarks, I found myself grappling with the realization that the factory in question was initiated by my grandfather, making my father the second-generation custodian of this familial legacy. I have long been aware that he had assumed control after graduating from high school. However, the revelation of a classmate mocking him caught me off guard. Richard maintained a silent smile while addressing my father. "So, did you manage to expand your father's factory? You did mention during high school that you intended to take over the company and make it bigger." To this, my father admitted, "Unfortunately, I lacked the business acumen, and that dream didn't materialize. It seemed inevitable that I excelled in practical skills but lagged behind in intellectual pursuits. Nonetheless, I felt relieved that our family didn't face financial ruin." Richard chuckled heartily, playfully slapping my father on the shoulder. "Well, David, we'll catch up at the next reunion. I've got more work to do," he added before leaving. My father looked slightly uncomfortable, prompting me to redirect the conversation. Suggesting a change of topic, my father proposed that we continue shopping. At that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's work had been belittled without any response from me. The internal debate about whether to take over my father's company or pursue a career at a prestigious corporation leaned decisively toward the latter. A few weeks later, fate intervened as my father's Alumni Association event took place at the bar where I worked part-time. Despite the bustling atmosphere, I managed to serve at the table hosting my father's gathering. Fulfilling my duties silently, I approached the room where the Alumni Association was held. My father warmly greeted me, introducing me as his son to those present. Though similar in appearance, I maintained a serious demeanor, responding awkwardly to the teasing of my father's inebriated classmates. Richard, seated nearby, noticed our interaction and remarked, "We met recently too, David, right? Are you planning to take over your father's small factory? This question added another layer to my ongoing contemplation of my professional path. When I truthfully admitted to still contemplating my decision, an unpleasant alcoholic breath emanated from Richard, leaving me repulsed. Boisterously, he exclaimed, "Stop it. Your father's company is nothing extraordinary. David should consider working for a company like mine instead of inheriting such a lackluster business." Despite his inebriated state, Richard proceeded to boast about his professional achievements, narrating a career history that began as a mere assistant but now claimed the head of accounting position. A sense of unease crept over me as I sensed discrepancies in his narrative. I sensed that something was amiss, but I chose to keep my concerns to myself, wary of potential complications that might arise from challenging him. My father, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by Richard's inebriation, and, in fact, found the situation amusing. With a lighter mood due to his own inebriation, he asked Richard about changes in his department since their last encounter a few weeks ago. Questioning the sudden shift from sales to accounting, my father caught Richard off guard. Eventually, Richard admitted to an abrupt transfer, asserting that sales wasn't his forte. However, my father pointed out the incongruity in Richard's story, revealing that the company Richard proudly spoke of had actually been absorbed by a foreign corporation, with its accounting department relocated overseas. Laughter erupted among the party attendees as Richard, now embarrassed and regretful, attempted to save face but ultimately decided to leave the gathering with heavy footsteps. Witnessing my father's ability to address the uncomfortable truth that others had noticed but hesitated to mention, I found a sense of pride in his candor, even in his intoxicated state. As half a year passed since that incident, my internal dilemma regarding whether or not to take over my father's company only intensified. The confusion deepened with each passing day, leaving me uncertain about the path I should pursue. One day, while relaxing at home, the intercom interrupted my contemplation. In the absence of my mother, I answered the door to find a visitor in uniformed clothes identifying themselves as a police officer. Surprised and apprehensive, I responded with a stiff voice, wondering if I had inadvertently committed some transgression. The police officer then brought up a purse-snatching incident, expressing a need to inquire about the matter with my father. The mention of such an incident left me puzzled, and I began to wonder about the unfolding events that seemed to add further layers of complexity to my already tumultuous life. Indeed, the enigmatic cloud of suspicion had descended upon my father, casting a shadow over our tranquil abode. The air thick with uncertainty, I found myself face to face with a stern-faced police officer bearing the weight of an accusation that seemed inconceivable. Inquiring about my father's whereabouts, the officer, with an air of professionalism, sought confirmation of his presence within our home. The exchange took an unexpected turn as the officer, grappling with the perplexity in my tone, requested to lay eyes upon my father. Navigating the corridors of my dwelling, I ushered the law enforcement representative into the sacred space of our familial sanctuary, a room adorned with a Buddhist altar and a photograph capturing the essence of my late father's spirit. In the ensuing revelation, I divulged the heartbreaking truth to the officer that my father had met an untimely demise in a tragic traffic accident. The officer, displaying empathy amid the unfolding tragedy, extended condolences for the loss. Yet my quest for justice and clarity persisted, and I sought to discern the source of this bewildering accusation that had stained my father's reputation. However, the officer, bound by the constraints of confidentiality, refrained from divulging the identity of the accuser. Apologies flowed from the lips of the officer as he departed, leaving me grappling with an unsettling sense of confusion and the nagging question of who had leveled such a grave accusation against my departed father. Days unfolded like the pages of a mystery novel, each chapter bringing a new layer of complexity to the narrative as I took on the responsibilities left in the void by my father's absence. Immersed in the daily operations of my father's factory, I witnessed my mother's valiant attempts to fill the void left by his absence. However, the weight of age limited her contributions. Amidst the mechanical symphony of the factory floor, the harmony was shattered by the sudden intrusion of Richard, a character bearing an air of accusation and vengeance. His booming voice reverberated through the cacophony, demanding restitution for a perceived transgression committed by my father. Caught in the crossfire of accusations, I attempted to reason with Richard, asserting my father's innocence in the face of the alleged purse-snatching incident. The atmosphere within the factory shifted, with the ceaseless hum of machinery giving way to hushed whispers and curious glances exchanged among the employees. Richard, however, remained resolute in his pursuit of justice, convinced of my father's guilt. His insistence echoed through the industrial expanse, causing a disturbance that transcended the confines of the factory. Frustration surged within me as I defended my father's honor, challenging Richard's assertions and questioning the veracity of his claims. As the confrontation unfolded, Richard revealed the purported timeline of the incident, fixing it 2 weeks prior. A murmur rippled through the gathered employees, their confusion palpable. My persistent queries regarding the accuracy of the timeline only fueled Richard's frustration, intensifying his vocal protestations. In the midst of the tumult, Richard's disparaging remarks about my father's workplace and colleagues added fuel to the emotional fire. Yet the gravest affront was his attempt to pin the blame for the alleged purse-snatching squarely on my deceased father's shoulders. My chest tightened with a mix of anger and sorrow as Richard persisted in his accusations, seemingly oblivious to the irrefutable truth, eliminating the fact that my father, the subject of this tumultuous ordeal, had met his end in a tragic traffic accident a month prior. The realization hung heavy in the air, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the injustice faced even in death. Richard appeared as though he had ingested an entire pigeonhole, and with an amused expression he muttered, "Ha!" Undeterred, I pressed on, questioning the incredulous accusation he had just hurled in my father's direction. How could my father snatch purses when he passed away just 1 month ago? Perhaps there wasn't any purse snatching at all, I asserted. However, my skepticism wasn't merely based on the recent events. It was rooted in the knowledge I had gained during our class reunion. It came to light that Richard, since his school days, had been a habitual liar. This revelation occurred during the reunion, where I discovered that his dishonesty had deep roots. Moreover, it turned out that Richard had harbored a long-standing jealousy toward my father, dating back to their school days. This envy sprouted from a romantic rivalry. The girl Richard liked had chosen my father over him. This petty jealousy had fueled an unnecessary rivalry, leaving me unable to forgive Richard for attempting to tarnish my deceased father's reputation with baseless accusations. As Richard persistently asserted his unfounded claims, an interjection from another direction pierced the air. Someone emphatically shouted, "Your president wouldn't do something like that." Our president is a serious person who walks around with honesty, teaching technology, and encouraging independence. He always considers the well-being of the staff and business partners, prioritizing that over profits. The voices praising my father began to multiply, and I felt a mix of emotions, including shame for once thinking my father's work was embarrassing. Amidst the rising tide of support for my father, Richard, trembling and tearful, found himself on the receiving end of an unexpected defense of my father's character by the factory workers. It was a poignant moment that revealed my father's true standing among his peers. In the aftermath, I dealt the decisive blow to Richard by pledging to consult with the police over his false accusations against my father. Overwhelmed and unable to counter the mounting evidence, Richard raised his voice and fled the factory. True to my word, I reported Richard's false accusations to the police, supported by a recording of his statements made by a thoughtful staff member during the heated confrontation. The presence of irrefutable evidence expedited the legal process, leading to Richard's swift apprehension. His attempt to frame my father backfired, transforming his lie into a crime for which he paid a penance in jail. The relief I felt was palpable, knowing that Richard had received the comeuppance he deserved. Days later, Richard's supposed wife sought redemption and arrived at our house with a gift box, apologizing to me and my mother. She confirmed that Richard's actions were a result of the wounds he suffered at the reunion. As it turned out, Richard, once an elite employee, had been fired from his company, struggling to secure new employment. His lies about being an elite crumbled under scrutiny, especially when his inebriated confessions exposed the inconsistencies, ultimately leading to his own embarrassment and downfall. As he grappled with mounting resentment towards my father, an insidious plan began to take root in Richard's mind, a sinister plot to frame him. The sheer audacity of Richard's intention left me utterly disgusted, particularly when I learned of his preposterous rationale for resorting to lies and deceit. Interestingly, it appeared that Richard's wife shared my sentiments. She confided in me, expressing her profound disappointment in Richard's actions and revealing her intention to initiate divorce proceedings. The revelation further underscored the gravity of Richard's transgressions. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the fact that Richard, seemingly devoid of any familial ties, had no children waiting for him upon potential release from jail. This realization cast a somber light on his future prospects. Upon my graduation from college, I found myself at a pivotal juncture. The recent passing of my father weighed heavily on my mind, and I harbored concerns about the state of the company he left behind. Motivated by a dual sense of responsibility and an unshakable desire to honor the legacy of those who had supported my father during Richard's malicious lies, I made the decision to step into the role of leading the company. The decision was multifaceted. Firstly, I felt a genuine concern for the effective management of the company in the wake of my father's demise. Secondly, the impassioned voices of the staff members who had steadfastly defended my father resonated within me. Their loyalty and dedication fueled my determination to become a president who would be both loved and respected by the staff. This incident became a transformative moment for me. Armed with a degree in business administration, I recognized my ability to manage the aspects of the company that my father struggled with. However, I also acknowledged my need to learn from the dedicated staff members who possessed valuable insights into the technological facets of the business. The staff members, driven by a collective sense of loyalty and compassion, willingly imparted their knowledge to me, often emphasizing that their efforts were for the sake of my father. Their anecdotes painted a vivid picture of my father's greatness, and with each story, I grew more appreciative of the man he was. Confronted with the realization of my father's true worth, I found myself expressing remorse for not having recognized his greatness while he was alive. Speaking to his portrait after work, I couldn't help but feel a sense of shame as I looked at my oil-stained self. Yet, I began to view those stains as tangible evidence of my father's tireless work ethic. Determined to honor my father's legacy, I pledged to become a president who mirrored his virtues. I was resolute in my commitment to make his dream of expanding the town factory, a legacy passed down since my grandfather's generation, a reality. Addressing his portrait once again, this time with newfound determination, I spoke of my aspirations and felt an ethereal connection, as if my father were smiling down upon me. From that moment forward, I dedicated myself to working tirelessly, aspiring to become a president worthy of my father's legacy and realizing his dream of expanding the family's factory that had endured through generations.